Guys, I think we're on. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a very basic video that would hopefully be helpful to the hobbyist like myself for guitar repairs, minor guitar tweaks, I should say, not repairs. Um, if you're an established guitar player, musician, this will not apply. This is purely aimed at the novice or the hobbyist like myself. So again, if you're a trained professional or a musician that regularly plays or plays out, you're not going to want to watch this. Just a fully upfront, transparent suggestion. So in any event, if you're like myself, a hobbyist, plays at home, um, buys inexpensive gear, and from time to time you're going to get the lemon, right, or the guitar that needs something to be done. It happens all the time with sub $200 guitars. It even happens with some of the more expensive guitars. But in any event, the ones that I buy, which are around the $200 range or less, I'm faced with the usual issues, right? And again, you're going to have the dilemma of when to do it or attempt to do the certain minor things yourself, or when to take the guitar to a trained professional, a luthier, your local guitar shop, whether it's Guitar Center, Sam Ash, whatever the case might be, your local repair shop. When do you try to attempt it yourself? When do you bring it to somebody else? So I can only give you my opinion on what I've done, and it's worked for me, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. So, when you buy an inexpensive guitar, i.e. what I bought here, which is a Mitchell guitar, you are going to face very common problems, right? So, for instance, what will I attempt to do when I get a new guitar that has a couple of things wrong? So, right out of the chute, whether it's an electric guitar or an acoustic guitar, in a lot of cases, the strings when you first get the guitar, the instrument, are either, very high or in some cases too low, and that's a neck relief issue, meaning the bow of the neck, the bend of the neck. Too much relief results in strings that are, unacceptably high off of the fretboard. And for a new player, that's a challenge. It's harder to press down on the chords. You don't get the chords to ring right and sound right. It's a lot harder to fight. You fight the guitar. You struggle with the guitar. So in this particular case, that's a situation where you have too much relief or high action. The flip to that is a lot of times you get a guitar and the strings are pressed right down to the fretboard, or a couple of them are on the fretboard, and that results in buzzing, or in some cases you can't play the guitar at all. So there you have too little relief, and that requires an adjustment to remove the buzzing and to heighten the strings so that they're no longer pressing down, and you can play the guitar. In both cases, the solution most of the time is a truss rod adjustment on the guitar to either lower the relief depending on what your problem is, or to add more relief, right? And usually the truss rod is over here. Sometimes on guitars it's down here in a wheel, the base of the neck. It depends. But in any event, it's a fairly simple adjustment. You're either going clockwise or counterclockwise, and the recommended way to do that is in baby steps, right? And quarter turns, not a lot, because either way you could risk, snapping the truss rod. Although that's not very common and not typically done, it can happen. So neck relief, whether the string height is too high or too low, that's something I can handle, and I attempt to do it, right? Most people can do that themselves. Don't need to take this to a guitar tech to do something that minor. The other thing is, in a lot of cases, the nut is the problem, where you get a little bit of buzzing, and that's because the strings aren't, the neck isn't, the nut isn't cut 100% accurate, and a lot of times the slots are too low, which might cause buzzing. And in that case, you just simply take a pencil and a little bit of graphite, add it to the slot, put the string back in, set the string back in, and a lot of times just the lead and the pencil, into that hole, into that space, adding that a little bit of lead will solve your problem. Other times it's just a nut issue. The nut might have to be replaced or whatever the case is. more work done. And in that case, I don't attempt to screw up the guitar any more than it already is, and I'll take that to a luthier or a guitar tech. Another common culprit when you get an inexpensive guitar is the fretboard is dry. And that's because a lot of times these guitars are sitting around the warehouse for a while, or it's being shipped overseas, and over time the fretboard material does dry out. There's a simple solution for that too, and just buying yourself an inexpensive bottle of lemon oil, putting it on a rag, and just wiping down the fretboard. And in a lot of cases, that solves the problem right out of the bat. That's all it requires is a little bit of oil, and it solves your dry frets or dry fretboard issue. Another thing that's common on, again, getting an inexpensive guitar, whether it's an acoustic or an electric, is you get garbage strings that are typically shipped with the guitar. And maybe right out of the box you're not up for bringing it to have, if you're not comfortable doing it, bringing it to somebody else to change the strings or whatever the case might be. You want to get the most life out of the strings as much as possible. You can get a cleaner like this, which I have, which is called Fast Fret. And it's simply a block which you take out and you run up and down the strings, and it cleans the gunk and the crap off of the strings. And in some cases, it makes a big difference. Other cases, if the strings are beyond that and they're corroded or whatever, it's not going to help too much. But this little, trick, which is from GHS, I bought it online. It's called Fast Fret. Works very well. The other thing is, too, again, back to strings. That's a minor thing that I do. I can handle changing strings. Sometimes you don't feel comfortable doing that, and you might want to take it to a guitar tech. In my case, it's something I can tackle. To make life easier, I use a string winder. It's a cheap appliance, right? You can buy these online anywhere for $4, $5, whatever. They're very inexpensive. And you simply put it on the tuner, and you wind or unwind, right? And that helps you having to manually do this for 2 hours, right? So that's a nice little toy to get, is a string winder. Very cheap and inexpensive. What else? Oh, sometimes when you buy a guitar, the tuners themselves, one or two of them are too loose, right? You'll get one that's got too much play in it or whatever. In a lot of cases, it simply requires you to just tighten the screws. Can you see that clearly, hopefully, that are on the end of the tuners? In most cases, they're Phillips head type screws. And you simply tighten them. And that'll usually solve the problem of the loose tuner, right? Again, anything beyond that, I don't attempt. But something that minor is something average Joe can handle, right? Okay. That is really the extent of what I try to do on my own without butchering my guitar or making it worse than it already is. In a lot of cases, it warrants me bringing the instrument to a trained professional or a luthier, a guitar shop, whatever the case might be. And that's when sometimes I get a guitar that's got high frets and has buzzing that I can't fix with the truss rod adjustment or adding some graphite to the nut or whatever the case might be. It's just actually physically has a high fret. The frets need to be crowned and sanded down or whatever. I don't attempt to file down frets and screw my guitar up. High frets, I bring that to a guitar tech. Similarly, if the nut itself is just bad and needs to be replaced, again, I'll bring it to a guitar shop, pay the price, and have them replace the nut. I don't get involved in things like that I can, really wreck the playability of the guitar. On an acoustic guitar, this is an electric, but on your acoustic, they have saddles here, and sometimes the string height on an acoustic guitar is abnormally high, right? If that's the case, in a lot of cases, the saddle on the acoustic is too high, and that needs to be filed down. Again, I don't attempt to file down any saddles, any material, plastic material, nut material on an acoustic guitar. I bring that to a professional. Similarly, on an acoustic guitar, in a lot of cases, it's not just the truss rod adjustment, but the strings are too low, and truss rod adjustments don't help them too much. And in that particular case, you need to add a shim or additional material to the saddle of the acoustic guitar. And again, I don't play around with that. It's something that a lot of people find easy enough to do themselves. I personally don't feel comfortable with it. I'll bring that to a guitar shop to have that work done. Intonation. Again, a lot of people find, especially players, find it's a simple thing to do. You just adjust the bridge on the guitar. There's a tool on an electric. It's a small little truss rod piece of equipment that looks like that small blacker truss rod in here, and you can play around with the intonation. But in a lot of cases, you're fixing one thing and screwing up another unless you know what you're doing. Again, average Joe doesn't do that. I don't venture there. I'll bring it to my guitar guy and have him adjust the intonation so that everything is fine. Relatively simple, but again, I don't go down that road. What else? I already talked about the frets, filing down frets. I don't get involved in that. If you have sharp fret ends on the guitar, which again, one of the more common problems when you get a budget guitar, inexpensive guitar, that's having gone through changes in humidity and changes in temperature. A lot of cases the wood shrinks on the fretboard or expands, and you have issues with very sharp fret ends. That's something I'll attempt to do, and don't worry too much about it. I use this, which is a sanding block, which you can buy in a dollar store or Home Depot, any kind of store like that. It has different grit levels, of sandpaper on it. I use the finer ones, which typically are on the sides or the corners of this four-sided block. And that's enough to file down the frets without, wrecking the wood around it. It's a very, very, again, you got to be careful. You don't want to be, too heavy-handed with something like this and cause more damage on the guitar than you have. But if you're gentle around sharp fret ends, usually this thing does the trick. Cheap, easy solution. Anything else, again, that requires physical work to the guitar, changing tuners, which sometimes people opt to do, changing and swapping in and out pickups. I don't get involved in that. I don't want any issues with the new things that I put in not aligning properly, not getting wired properly. In a lot of cases, tuners seem like a simple thing, but they don't line up on the screws. There were many problems that could happen with that. I don't tackle them. Average Joe brings those to a professional to worry about that. Changing and adding things I don't do. So guys, the basics anybody can do, in my opinion, and you don't need to spend $40 on or $50 or $60 wherever you, depending upon where you live, to have a guitar set up initially, just a basic setup, changing strings, maybe lubricating the fretboard, basic stuff like that, filing down one or two sharp fret ends. I do that myself. Beyond that, I will bring it to a luthier and have them do the proper work. So, if you find this video helpful and useful to you as an amateur, as a hobbyist, first-time guitar player, whatever the case might be, appreciate your support. Subscribe, thumbs up always helps. Any questions that you have as a newbie regarding your first encounter doing something to a guitar, file them below in the questions. I'll do my best to answer them as quickly and promptly as possible. And as always, guys, until the next time, you be well and stay safe. Take care.